Hello everyone, I'm Daryl Lim. I'm a poet from Singapore, and this is Mr. Wong Phui Nam, a pioneering Malaysian poet. And I'm here today to talk to him about his writing, his life, and his works. And I'm the editor of his latest revised edition of The Hidden Papyrus of Hen Tawi. And we're going to just talk about how he started writing and how he came to write. Mm-hmm. So I think the first question I have, Mr. Wong, is how did you come to write, and when did you first know that you wanted to write seriously?
Well, actually my first love was music,
right.
Not writing. And at the age of 12 or 13 or so, that's when I first heard some classical music. Mm-hmm. Because at that time we were living in the school, a Chinese school where my stepmother was running a tuck shop. And in that same school, the headmaster's brother was having a room also. Right. And he was a musician. He was in fact the music teacher of the school. So I got to know him, and he introduced me, gave me some records on pieces like Chopin's Polonaise, Weber's Introduction to a Dance, the Hungarian dances and so on. Yeah. And to be frank, I was really ecstatic, much more so than when I came to poetry later on. Right. So that made me feel that I really wanted to write music.
Right.
And in fact, and then I bought books on harmony and things like that.
Wow, okay.
And learned about harmonic progressions, musical forms, and so on. Mm. And also this musician, he somehow liked me and he gave me his violin. And I used the violin as the basis for composing.
Right.
But I didn't get very far because I didn't have a piano.
Right.
And if you want to be a composer, you need to have training to listen to the chords and chord progressions and so on, and hear the modulations and things like that. And well, I worked up to the point where I could write duets.
Wow.
For violins, which I played with my brother, who somehow also got his violin. And then I tried to write the piano pieces. And what happened was that in school, I had a girl who was my classmate, and she played the piano, and I wrote it for her.
Oh wow!
That was a devastating discovery, because when she played it, it didn't sound like anything to do with the piano. So I was quite chastened. So
right. And then Did you stop then?
In that sense, I stopped writing stopped writing music, and well, then what else can I write? Then I started thinking of writing poetry as a next best thing.
Right.
So in school.
So in some ways you are a failed. In some ways you are a failed musician.
A failed musician. Yeah, because at that time the family was too poor. We couldn't afford a piano. We could just able to afford violin tuition fees, which was very cheap in those days.
Mm. I mean, this is jumping ahead a bit, but do you think there is a sense of music that you consider in your poetry?
Yeah, I think that's why if you notice in my poems, I don't follow the iambic or any of the sort of accepted meters and so on. Yeah. I go by the phrase as if it's a piece of music, and I listen to the shape of the phrases in the poems in the way that as if it sounds like music. Right. So that's how it is.
So as you write, do you read it out first? Do you check it against the sound?
Well, I don't read it out aloud. I can hear the sound in my mind.
I see. So when you decided you wanted to write and like seriously, Who were the poets that you first read?
Well, at that time I was still in school.
Right.
I think I started around Form Standard 8, which is the equivalent of Form 4. And naturally, in those days, we were taught Shakespeare, Wordsworth, and Keats, and Shelley, and so on. So I imitated those poems. But the point was that I learned English quite late.
Right.
So I didn't have a sense of words, the register and tone and things like that, and the music and the connotations that words carry and so on. So it didn't go very far, but I did manage to write a few Keatsian sonnets, which I sent to my pen pals, all girls, and all in Europe. No one in UK, but then send it to UK because my English will be exposed. And at the time, I still had doubts about writing this, in English because I thought, now all these English people who know English so well, how come they are writing? They are not writing, and they're just struggling to learn the language, trying to write in that language.
Yeah. But do you think actually not growing up in the language gives you some advantages? And I mean, I cite the example of Nabokov, who is a Russian, but actually he's famous for having written in English. And because that not growing up in the language breaks you out of that native mode of speaking, and so you're able to see how you can play with the language outside that convention. So I'm wondering if there's something, would you found liberating about not having to follow these conventions?
No, I think to the contrary, I think it's a disadvantage.
Right.
In the sense that if I've grown up, let's say if I started talking English from the time I was a baby,
right,
I would have been much more fluent. Because I was still struggling with the language, even up to Form 5. And in fact, one teacher said, "Your English is very bad." And even up to university, you can see that the way I use English. In other words, you can see that there's no sense of the language at all. I think it's important to acquire a sense of the language. But I kept on writing until I think I might say that I only discovered my voice after leaving the U. All those stuff I produced
during university.
During the university years, well, they can best be forgotten.
Actually, on that note, can you tell us a bit more about what happened in the University of Malaya? Because there were a lot of poets who started off then, like Edwin Thambu, yourself, and a few others. So could you tell us about the background, what was happening then, the milieu of that time?
Yeah, there was, I think it was in the atmosphere that the students want to write, and this was, I suppose, supported or encouraged by the New Cauldron.
Yes.
There was a university magazine at the time. And of course, there were also a number of students trying to write, poets and non-poets and so on. So among the students there, I met Tan Han Ho and also Oliver Singh.
Yes.
But the three of us we formed kind of a comradeship, and we used to spend hours at the students' union canteen, talking rubbish. We thought what you thought was philosophy and all that sort of thing, and we even skipped lectures while talking and drinking tea and so on. Anyway, it was fun, and then we would go back to our rooms and then we wrote what we thought were poems, and then the next day we showed the poems to each other.
Right.
Now at that time, of course, Han Ho was, no Han Ho, Oliver was quite accomplished. I mean, his style was Dylan Thomas kind of style. Even Han Ho, even though it seemed his poems were rather obscure, but you can see that it was written from his unconscious, and it somehow makes some subliminal sense. But at the same time, although it was fun, and other people joined in because they see us being so keen, and other people like Ernest Wong and Ho Wakam and so on, and they also started to compose poetry like sitting on the Sputnik, gazing at the moon. That's Irene was so serene. Irene was a waitress at one of the bars. That kind of stuff.
Right, I see, yeah.
But on the other side of that coin, you have one lecturer in particular. His name was Chikera. He was.
Yes.
To this day, I don't understand why he was dead against us writing at all.
Yes.
He was a Sri Lankan, I think.
Right.
Probably it was from Oxford. Supposed to be a Shakespeare expert. Probably we thought that this you native and all that, you know nothing about English, and you try to write and you desecrate Shakespeare and so on.
It was kind of snobbery
that's right.
from him, yeah.
And he went to the extent that he threatened to fail us. That's the reason I didn't qualify in English.
Oh, right.
That's well. Anyway, I didn't intend to take English literature.
Because you did economics in the end.
And one fellow, Ho Wakam, who was 1 year ahead of us, he was doing his honors year. He was actually called up and told, you associate with people like Phui Nam and Han Ho, I will fail you. I'll make sure you fail.
That's amazing.
You know? And that fellow came back to our rooms and his face all green. Ho Wakam is still around in Singapore.
He's still around.
I think you know him.
No, I have not met him, but yeah, that's...
But and also I was told by Vic Nason, he said by the time he came to collect the poems for Bunga Mas, Enright was a professor.
DJ Enright.
During our final year, Enright was the external examiner.
Right.
It seemed the Chikara fellow told Enright to fail me, particularly. But I suppose Enright, being an Englishman, probably he thought it's very unfair.
Yeah, he has a sense of fair play, right?
So at least it's a compromise. Don't qualify the fellow.
Oh well.
That was the atmosphere. Well, I tend to think back on that time, those times, with a bit of nostalgia.
Of course, yeah.
And I still remember.
Were there poets that you discovered then that you all felt?
So, of course, during our second year, Edwin Tambu's Rape of Birth came out. And he was admired by some lecturers like Mrs. Barker. Oh, and only I don't. I think she would have long gone.
Yes.
At the time, so she even talked about the book during our tutorials and so.
Oh wow!
And from there, I got caught up. Yeah, maybe it's possible, despite Chekera, we can take writing seriously.
Yes. But there were also the French symbolists that you all were very much into?
Yes.
You, Han Ho, and Oliver Seed.
That's right. I think up to that time, most of the people who wrote poetry stuck to English models.
Yes.
And you look at Cooper and, of course, Shelley and Keats and so on.
Yes.
So we thought we'd be ranged further afield. So I started with reading the American poets.
Right.
The one poet that particularly caught I was interested in was Hart Crane.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. The others was Emily Dickinson, and there was an 18th century woman, Anne Bradstreet.
Yes,
I
yes.
don't know whether you
Yes,
heard.
yes, yes.
And Wallace Stevens. These were my gods at the time.
Yes.
And later on, of course, other American poets were John Crow Ransom, Robert Penn Warren. I think just to try to form your own style, you read as widely as possible. Then, of course, with after reading Eliot and so on, Eliot, of course, also had influence.
Yes.
In fact, reading the Wasteland was a discovery. It was quite exciting.
Yeah.
And then, of course, from Eliot, there was a reference to the French symbolists.
That's right.
So
Of course, yes, yes.
because between Eliot
Yes.
and Pound, they were influenced by the
Yes,
French.
yes.
And from there, I went to look at the French poets. And the ones that I was most interested in were Baudelaire and Rimbaud.
Rimbaud, yeah.
These are mainly the two.
Yes.
Mallarmé or that's how it's
Mallarmé.
pronounced,
Yeah, I
his
think
name.
it's Mallarmé.
Actually, it was a bit beyond me to have strength.
I see. I see.
And to this day, I think Baudelaire is the one that stuck with me. Because I feel an affinity for him. Because he was writing at a time when Paris was something like Kuala Lumpur in those days.
Okay.
Where the government says it's good to be rich. And I think it was not long after the Industrial Revolution in the he was born in 1821.
Yes.
So he would be writing around the mid-19th century.
It was kind of the start of the
so
sort of
it's good to be
industrial economy, capitalist economy.
That's right. It's good to be rich.
Yeah.
And he was also, I think, in a way obsessed with death.
Actually, yes.
And he wrote about the poor in Paris. But one thing that I have not in common with him is he was a dandy, which I'm not. I'm a sloppy.
I think your first sort of serious poems were written in the 1960s, after you had left the university. So I was wondering if you'd tell us about how you came to write How the Hills Are Distant, which was published in 1968 or 58.
Actually, first published in 1963 or 4
Right, yes.
under Bunga Mas.
Yes, that's right. Bunga Imas, yeah. So could you tell us how you came to write How the Hills Are Distant, and what is it about, I guess? is one way to start.
No poetry asked.
As far as possible, yes.
But anyway, well, it's actually from the influence of the French symbolists, So reading Rimbaud and so on, you tend to get a sense of an epiphany that is going to happen.
Ah, okay. Yes.
And of course, partly this, as I told you earlier, comes from the sense of trying to understand the mystery of death because of the early deaths of my parents and so on. So you got to have this. I had this excitement of feeling that some epiphany was going to happen. So that's why the first few poems were more like that, on that basis. And of course it didn't happen. And I don't think there's such a thing as God's grace. Maybe to a few mystics it happens, but to us ordinary people, we don't feel God's grace. Ordinary sinners like us. So, of course, there's some letdown. So the later poems you can see, there's a dissolution.
Yes.
And there's one poem about the crucifixion and so on,
Yes.
and he ended with nothing. And poems like the one about Batu Road, the Batu Road in those days, the lane parallel to it was a red light district all along there.
Okay, no.
So you can see that.
Yeah.
You can see that the women and all these were sort of humiliated women, used as pieces of flesh and so on. So the idea is then to put expression to that kind of spiritual condition. So what I have written in the Hentawi actually has its roots right at the beginning.
Right.
You know, and of course at that time I had no idea about having to seek transcendence and so on. So from that I went on to writing the Osiris poem. You know, about to put more sort of how do I put it? More of a story through the Osiris myth.
Yeah.
You know, or to give it a narrative that it wasn't in the original, those poems in the How the Hills Are Distant.
Yes.
To give it a narrative, and the narrative was this god king,
Local Osiris.
under Malaysian conditions, which are also tropical conditions for vegetation, has become so mutated into something monstrous rather than
coming back to life. Yeah.
So that's it. And of course, another way to look at it is to look at the lives of my relatives.
Yes.
And the way the best way to look at it is when at the moment when they're about to die, how they cope with this. My fat uncle.
Yes.
Yeah, two uncles actually.
Your grandma.
The cousin and your grandma and so. Yeah. And see how, you know, how they reacted and how mundane they were. And they were also fearful of death. Every one of them. Not a single exception. Though in fear of death. Why? Because they were just selves, and they didn't see any way to overcome their self. And as a self, which has an instinct for survival, the natural result of that is a great fear of death. And he also says that having no culture as such, although we are Chinese, supposed to have 3,000 years of cultures, yes. But they came from the lowest of the low classes, my forebears from China. To be very frank.
True of mine as well. Yeah.
And also the fact that they have emigrated to a distant land. You cannot claim it to be our inheritance anymore. So we have to start with the culture of the new place. And as far as concerned, there was no culture. And as I have said, it was the psyches or naked psyches. And so they were totally helpless in the face of death.
I see. But that brings us from How the Hills Are Distant to the second collection, which is Remembering Grandma and Other Rumors. But actually, as some readers will know, between that there was 30 years, right?
Yeah.
More or less. So you stopped writing for 30 years. So why did you stop writing for 30 years?
I think it's also doubts also began to creep in,
right.
Maybe unnecessary doubts about is it valid to write in English, which is not my language.
Yes.
And of course Chinese, I'm not competent in writing Chinese given the kind of education that I had. And at that point in my life, I knew almost nothing of Malay. No, I only learned Malay after marrying my wife. In fact, my wife told me, you got a cheek to tackle a Malay woman without knowing skill. So there was, but added to that, actually it was the virulence language politics at the time.
Yes.
You know? They even had a congress to declare Malay literature is the only valid literature for Malaysia. they had a conference,
Right.
or the congress or whatever or forum or whatever they call it.
Right. So when you started writing again, how did your poetics shift from How the Hills Are Distant to your second collection? Remember Grandma? Because now it shifted to something that was more personal. Now it's because it was actually about your family. And I was just wondering how that shift happened to you.
Well, gradually, you see, if you look at the first volume, there were no people in it.
No, exactly.
Right?
Yes.
And only in the Grandma book that there was a transition where you had the Tin Miner ruminating
Yes.
to himself.
Yes.
And gradually my poems shifted, evolved into poems spoken by people. Almost everyone is spoken by somebody or some character or other.
Yes.
And in fact, Edwin Tambu, as I told you, had commented that I only write about dead people. I find that in doing so, you put the subject matter at a distance, and for me, it's easier to say what I want to say. You know, having a third person saying it.
Right. Yes.
The other thing is, of course, if you just write in the first person and in the manner I was writing in the hills are distant,
Yes.
is that gradually probably you turn into something, you become very prosy, like Wordsworth.
Right.
No, you start drawing morals from the poems and so on. That is a danger also, to write in the first person all the time. Become very didactic.
Yes. I'm wondering, because you mentioned things about the national language movement, and I was wondering how other events in Malaysia's history may have affected your writing. Aside
Well,
from
the events, of course, a lack of publishers.
so that's more about
the lack of a real market.
It's more about the ecosystem and the kind of context.
Yeah, in fact, part of the reason why I was silent is there was no infrastructure support at all until the universities were established here, when they started teaching some Malaysian writings and so on. Then only something was going on. But even now, that atmosphere is not as in Singapore. Writers are few and far between among the English writers.
I think we spoke a bit at the launch about what the book is about. But maybe just for viewers, you can just tell us a little bit about how you came to write the book and why you decided to revise the book, although it was published earlier.
The book was the first version of I would call it the whole thing one poem, despite despite it being in the form of 53 sonnets. I didn't think about it for some time, and then when I just opened the book to read it again, then I realized it wasn't well structured, and there was a developing thought of the possibilities of transcending the self, to overcome all the difficulties I was writing about in that poem.
Yes, all the attachments, lust and everything.
So of course, the first thing was having got this thought. Somehow I started writing a first poem and then a second poem, and it came to 21 additional poems. And then reviewing the whole series, then I realized I had to structure it so that it forms a kind of a narrative from beginning to end, starting from criticism of religious practices in today's society here and maybe elsewhere in the world, to the final few sonnets about the attempt
To transcend.
to find transcendence over the self, and hopefully the hope is eventually you can see reality of God or the void, as I said, depending on what religious point of view you take.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Wong.